Welcome to Under the Microscope. This series is brought to you by the Real Scientists Nano team. Our goal is to provide a platform where scientists can communicate their work and interact with the public. With that in mind, every week we introduce you to a scientist working in the field of materials and nanoscience, who would be curating the RealSci_Nano Twitter account.
Hi everyone, today we have with us Antonija Grubisic-Cabo, who is a postdoctoral researcher at the KTH Royal Institute of Technology in Sweden. Hi Antonija, wonderful to have you on Real Scientist Nano. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, and thanks for having me.
Super excited to get all nerdy about the 2D materials and more. Let's start with your scientific journey so far. So your scientific career so far. So how did you end up in your current research field?
So I mostly ended up in my research field by accident. Mm-hmm. I originally intended to do astrophysics, and I even took some astro courses during my undergrad. Okay. But then I had a course on magnetism, and I was like, wow, how do magnets work? This is super exciting. And I enjoyed it so much that I decided to do my master's in magnetism, where I worked with quasi-zero-dimensional magnetic materials. Mm-hmm. And I really, really enjoyed it. So I decided to stick to, condensed matter physics. Uh-huh. But then it turned out there were no PhD positions in magnetism when I was finishing. And my supervisor's colleague, who was doing graphene, he said like, oh yeah, there's this really, nice group in Denmark. They're looking for PhDs. I think you should totally try it. They're like super nice people. They do cool science. And I was like, the only thing I know about graphene is that it's cool because I've seen a popular science doc by the same person a week before. And I was like, okay, I'm going to give it a try. Uh-huh. And then I ended up doing PhD in nanoscience, working on 2D materials. Mm-hmm. And I really, really enjoyed it. So I continued working with 2D materials and mostly studying them with different kind of spectroscopies.
Uh-huh. Okay. Wow. That's quite a journey to wanting to do astrophysics and then magnetism and then now entering the world of 2D materials through graphene. That's wonderful.
It's a bit random, but I decided I really like this, so why not?
Yeah, that's the most important thing, right? As long as you like it and you love it, it's that's what you should be doing, no matter how. Not random, to be honestly. But that sounds really cool. So, where would you say your current research or your current projects that you're working on, where do they fit in this big picture of materials or nanoscience, in this big puzzle? Where do they fit?
So I would say definitely physics of nanomaterials. Even though I have a PhD in nanoscience, I'm mostly a physicist. Mm-hmm. So I'm studying physics of different 2D materials, and now I'm also looking into materials that we like to call quantum materials, which is a super broad term that includes 2D materials and a lot of other nanomaterials, mm-hmm. but sometimes with very strong quantum effects appearing on, all scales.
Uh-huh. Okay. Wow. That is so fascinating. It does sound to me that, you are involved with a lot of interesting research projects or research experiments. So if you have to pick one that you're most proud of, and I can imagine how many there are that you're proud of, but if you have to pick one, the most fun or exciting or quirky one, could you do that and explain it to us in simple words in the section we call In Other Words?
I'm trying to decide between two now.
Okay.
So during my PhD, I did a work in collaboration with chemistry department, mm-hmm. which was really, really cool because I got to learn a lot about chemistry. And what we were trying to do is transfer graphene from one substrate to another. So I was growing graphene, and the chemistry group, they were trying to peel off graphene that I grew on iridium, which is a really, really expensive metal. And they were just trying to peel it off with electrochemical methods and just transfer it on silicon, where it can be used for devices. I thought it was super exciting because first we didn't know how they're doing it. We were calling it chemistry magic. Then they were trying to explain it to us. It's like, no, it's very simple. But it was a lot of fun, and it was a great collaboration. I got to learn a lot, and we even have a paper in Electrochemistry Journal, which is very cool for me because I'm a physicist. So I'm like, yay, a chemistry paper.
Okay. All right. That sounds quite exciting, and I can understand why you picked that as part of as the project that you're most proud of, because I remember I was also very fascinated with the transfer, so the graphene transfer. However, in my case, I grew it on copper. So there we would just dissolve copper. And in case of iridium, I guess you or the chemistry group was trying to peel it off because you want to reuse the iridium, right?
Yeah, iridium is really rare and also really expensive. But the graphene you grow on has very nice properties when you look at it with different spectroscopies. So we wanted to see if we can get graphene of higher quality, but you can't really etch iridium away. It's way too rare and expensive.
Right.
So it was a challenge for them, and it was also a bit of, oh my, I really hope this, crystal comes back looking the same. And it looked the same, and it worked even better. Like every growth we did later was awesome. So we're like, maybe they improved it.
So what did they do? Did they pass place a voltage across different parts of iridium so that the graphene will just float away, so take off parts of the iridium layer? Or can you not talk about it? I don't know.
Oh, I can, but I might say something wrong. I hope my chemistry colleagues won't be too upset. So graphene, when it's grown on iridium, it has a sort of medium strength of interaction. So it's more strongly bound than on copper. So to be able to peel it off electrochemically, you first have to intercalate something. And in this case, it was tetraoctyl ammonium ions, which are actually really, really big. And when you intercalate them under graphene, they sort of lift it off, and then it's more freestanding. And then they would just do this conventional bubbling method, just pass current through, and graphene would just float on top of the water. It was covered with all the PMMA and other polymers, but then you could just fish it out and put it on a silicon substrate, which was super cool.
Wow! So they did the transfer by intercalation. Wow!
Yeah, so they tried just peeling it off without intercalation, but it wasn't really working because it was bound too strongly.
Okay.
But I thought it's quite cool. It's like, oh, it's on my very pretty crystal, and now it's floating in the water.
Yeah, I mean, once it works, it's obvious, right? Of course it works. What are you talking about? But to think about it, like just put tiny, not bubbles, but atoms or molecules between the iridium and graphene, just so the graphene just comes off of the iridium or peels off of iridium. That's an amazing idea. Absolutely. I can understand why you picked this project as the one that you're most proud of, or the most fun or quirky one. I can completely understand that.
Yeah, I also like that it was in collaboration with chemistry, so I got to have a lot of meetings with them. And it's like you learn a lot, but sometimes you're just sitting there being, okay, I'm gonna have to Google a lot of things when I go back to my office.
Yeah, I also like the term chemistry magic.
Yeah, that's how we used to call it in the beginning. It's like chemistry magic. They know what they're doing. Line, that was my colleague's name. She does chemistry magic, and everything looks amazing. So, whatever she's doing, it's magic.
And after that, after the chemistry magic, the iridium crystal is even better because the graphene is growing better on it. You mentioned that.
Yeah, we were really stressed that something's going to happen, but nothing ever happened. And at some point, we were convinced things are starting to work better. Like, oh, we're trying to clean our crystal, but now there's again graphene. We're trying to get rid of it.
Okay, all right, super. That sounds fantastic. So, Antonia, let's talk a bit about the other parts of a researcher's life or an academic's life. When I say a researcher, I mean in the academic sense. Um, do you have a wish list or some sort of a list of courses that you would want to teach at some point? Have you thought about it a little bit?
So I've done a bit of teaching during my PhD and also a bit in my undergrad. And I would really like to teach maybe some introductory level solid state condensed matter physics, because I think it's very important to show people how, all the interesting things we can do, and that it's not too complicated or maybe too boring. And it's sort of in my field, so I feel like, any condensed matter or surface science, that would be really nice to teach. But also maybe general, like introductory physics, because those are very early courses, and I think, you get to interact with students very early on, and you get to share your passion for physics with them,
Right.
and hopefully inspire them to also join research.
Right, right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that sounds good. I hope that and I hope that you do teach in the near future or sometime in the future all of these courses and advanced courses and everything, and also maybe a course about, I don't know, 2D materials. That could also be interesting because the field is growing so much that.
I actually didn't think about that, but that would be a really nice course to teach, actually.
Yeah, just about 2D materials and get the, I don't know, undergrads or master students fascinated about the flatland materials in the flatland, as they call them.
Yeah, my colleagues in Australia, where I was before coming to KTH, actually made a 2D materials course for high school students.
Wow.
Yeah, that was super exciting, and they taught them a lot about graphene. And we even had high school students come and do exfoliation of graphene experiments.
Ooh,
So
fancy.
yeah, 2D materials would be a really, really cool course.
Yeah.
And you can always do fun experiments. All you need is a sticky tape and some graphite, maybe even some pencils.
Right, right. Yeah, and then take beautiful microscopic, like optical microscopy pictures with like different colors when you have stacks. It's not really graphene, but
I think it might be too advanced to get students to stack different 2D materials in the first class, but
True. Yeah, but maybe for I don't know. Yeah, I'm just 2D materials. It's all amazing for me. But yeah, that sounds amazing. And so let's move back to the research experience. So I hope your research experience has been wonderful so far and will continue to be wonderful in the future as well. However, if you had three wishes to improve your research experience, what would you ask for? And I'm not promising anything here, okay?
yeah, my research experience has been very enjoyable so far. But well, of course, just like everybody else, having a bit more permanent position would be, on my wish list. That's the usual. It's also much easier to plan for experiments and projects and everything if you know you'll be somewhere for, staying for a bit longer. And that would be like number one. Number two would be probably that sometimes we just want to do research for fun. A lot of, for a lot of research, you need to have an explanation of we're going to have this application, that application, and a lot of things I work on is sort of, this is a brand new physics. It could be useful for things, but I don't have a device here. It's I'm not building a new phone, so I can't promise you it's going to be, a new phone, new computer. And sometimes we just, like to do it for fun and out of curiosity to learn new science.
Right.
So sort of that not being frowned upon, or, I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
It's sort of expected that you have to have an outcome, but
Right.
working with new materials, it's really hard to tell what the outcome will be.
Mm-hmm. Right, right. So a bit more flexibility and just to take the pressure off of, no, what are you expecting from this experiment? How are you going to change the world? How are you going to make flexible smartphones, something like that? Instead of going that way, more like, we have this new cool material. Let's try to intercalate it with something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like we can have something cool with cool physics, and maybe in 10 years we will have something out of it, or it will turn out that idea was terrible, but we're going to do something else. Like everybody wanted to use graphene for transistors in phones, but now we have it as a sort of a heat sink and in touch screens. So it is in phones, but not really what we all thought it will do. So sometimes it's really hard to tell.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So those were the two wishes. Do you have a third one?
I had some problems with VPN connections, so I'm very much in favor of more open source publications and also using preprint servers. So physicists are really big on archive, and it's a preprint server mostly for physics, which I actually didn't know. It was so much, everyday thing for me that I thought everybody's using archive. So making science more accessible for everyone, I think it's on my wish list.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. So all three wishes, I hope they're granted like that. I wish it was like that. That okay, tomorrow, Antonia, when you go to work, everything is as you expected. But I would like to believe that it's not going to be like that. Of course, it takes time, but I would like to believe that we are collectively working towards a more fun or a richer research experience kind of a world. And speaking of future, what are you most looking forward to in the next 3 months?
So the lab I joined was moving from one building to another. So I'm really, really looking forward to our lab setup to be finalized and assembled so that I can do some experiments finally. Everything also got a bit delayed due to the whole pandemic situation. So it would be really nice to do some experiments in the lab and do some real science again.
That makes sense. What would be the first experiment you would want to do once the lab is set up?
I'm quite certain we'll measure graphene because it's our standard candle. We want to know how good the setup is, and we're planning to measure graphene because it's such a great material to, check everything on your system.
Like a calibration of sorts.
Yeah, it's going to be a calibration material and it's going to be graphene.
All right, super. That sounds amazing. So this has been wonderful, Antonia. And before we let you go, I want to understand from you, what are the challenges faced by the field of materials or nanoscience, or what are the big questions that the materials or nanoscientists are trying to answer from your perspective? What do you think the big challenges are?
So in particular, let's say 2D materials or these quantum materials field, I'd say a lot of focus is now on sort of dynamic changes in materials. So we figured that not only can we change materials by intercalating them or making different sandwiches, but now there's also a chance to change them by using, for example, lights or different kind of, let's say, electromagnetic waves of different frequencies, sort of to, if material as we have it is in a ground state, by using, let's say, laser light, we can excite it into some metastable state that will have different properties. So there are materials where you can just use laser light and basically change their topology, which is something I will mention in one of my tweets or a few.
Okay. All right. Interesting. That's an interesting one. I never thought about it. Never thought about this challenge. So thank you very much, Antonia. This has been wonderful. Looking forward to having you on Real Scientist Nano. And well, thank you. I enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you, and thanks for all the questions. I'm looking forward to tweet about all the things I like.
Thank you for listening. To know more about us, please visit our website, realscientistsnano.org, and follow us on Twitter at realsci_nano.